We said in the last episode that we shall have to attend to the Roman Empire in this episode, and you must be wondering why we have not met a single Anglo-Saxon yet. The Anglo-Saxons are coming, but first we have to etch into our minds a bit of information about this empire which has crucial bearing on the spread of Roman Christianity, Roman government, Roman jurisprudence, Roman arts and literature in Europe.
We said in the last episode that we shall have to attend to the Roman Empire in this episode, and you must be wondering why we have not yet met a single Anglo-Saxon. The Anglo-Saxons are coming, but we have first to etch into our minds a bit of information about this empire, which has crucial bearing on the spread of Roman Christianity, Roman government, Roman jurisprudence, Roman arts and literature in Europe. Everyone knows of the Roman Empire, and there have been several good drama documentaries on the British television in the last couple of years, since sold to broadcasters worldwide. Julius Caesar is probably the most memorable Roman, and he was assassinated in 44 BC outside the Senate, the Roman Parliament House. This was followed by a long civil war, first between the assassins and Mark Antony, and then between Mark Antony, supported by the legendary Queen Cleopatra of Egypt, and Octavian, adopted son of Julius Caesar. Octavian was victorious and became the first Roman Empire as Augustus in 30 BC. He founded a race of emperors who were to reign until the 15th century, claiming an imperial legitimacy from Augustus. They did not reign from Rome for much of that time, but from Constantinople, a Greek city then called Byzantium. These rulers are known as the Eastern Roman or Byzantine emperors. We shall meet some of them who were to influence events as far away as Britain. The Roman Empire, at its greatest extent under the Emperor Trajan at the beginning of the 2nd century AD, stretched from Basra in modern Iraq in the east to Britain, or Britannia as it was called, at the edge of the world in the west. It included all of modern Spain, Portugal, France, Belgium, Italy, Austria, former Yugoslavia, Bulgaria, Romania, Greece, Turkey, Syria, Palestine, Egypt, Libya, Tunisia and Morocco. It also incorporated slices of southwest Germany, Hungary, the Crimea now in the Ukraine, Georgia and Armenia. It also had a single currency. Trajan was succeeded in AD 117 by Emperor Hadrian, who built the wall named after him between Britannia and Caledonia, the Roman name for Scotland. The most infamous of the emperors are said to have been Caligula, who made himself a god. He also made his horse Incitatus Consul, or chief magistrate of Rome, and murdered his sister and his sister's child by him. He was murdered by his own bodyguard called the Praetorians. The other is Nero, who is supposed to have played the fiddle when Rome burned, an apocryphal story, and murdered his mother Agrippina, with whom he also had an incestuous relationship, not an apocryphal story. For a rollicking read, I can do no better than to recommend two historical novels by Robert Graves, I, Claudius and Claudius the God, in which both of these psychotic emperors feature. The most important emperor for us is Constantine the Great, who made Christianity the state religion of the Roman Empire, encouraged its growth and reigned from 312 to 337, founding Constantinople in 330 as the new Roman capital in place of Rome. We shall come to him later, and what we need to remember is that southern Britain was part of this vast empire for 350 years and was influenced by imperial culture. Britain takes its name from a mythological Roman figure called Brutus, according to the 12th century chronicler Geoffrey of Monmouth, who may have invented him. Christianity was transmitted through Roman Catholicism, although Rome was in fact the junior partner to Constantinople in Christendom for centuries. Roman popes had to be confirmed by East Roman or Greek emperors who enjoyed some temporal sway in Italy into the 11th century. Their governors, known as exarchs, ruled from Ravenna on the Adriatic Sea, a route march of not much more than 300 miles from Rome, so wise popes showed due deference. Catholic conquest of Western Europe was opposed in the former imperial provinces of Iberia, Gaul and Britannia, not by pagans so much as by an older form of Christianity that had probably germinated in the 2nd and 3rd centuries and thriven in the last century of imperial rule in Western Europe. Disputes between Roman evangelists and local Christians will seem to most of us pettifogging, unless you agree with me that they were less about forms of worship than about obedience to papal authority, an authority cautiously exercised. The island of Britain was particularly recalcitrant, and much of it was under the control of in-comer pagans and established Christian heretics, our Anglo-Saxons and Britons in that order, in the 5th century. The East Roman or Byzantine Empire, based on Constantinople, was so enormously rich that it was simply called the city by everyone. Its modern Turkish name, Istanbul, also means the city. It was ruled by emperors who enjoyed a dwindling overlordship over the Roman Pope from the mid-8th century until the final split called the Great Schism in 1054, when, for simplicity, we might say that there were two main brands of European Christianity, Roman Catholicism and Greek Orthodoxy, the latter a mighty religion in numbers of adherents since the missions of St. Cyril and his brother St. Methodius in the 9th century, who added Ukraine and later Moscow to Christendom. Nor shall I ignore, in a later episode when we come to speak of the Dark Ages, the several breakaway strands of the Greek Church which prospered for centuries under Muslim and other non-Christian rulers in Syria, modern Iraq, Iran, southwards to Kerala in India, and eastwards as far as China, where there remain forms of this ancient Christianity to this day. Within the two European strands of Christianity in their early years, the 4th and 5th centuries, there were divisions, unsurprisingly branded heretics by Roman and Orthodox churches. Principal of these at the time was the Coptic Church of Egypt, which still has its own pope in predominantly Muslim modern Egypt, where it lives on under Pope Shenouda III. Officially, Copts make up 10% of the Egyptian population of 70 million today, but it has been suggested that the proportion of Christian Copts is closer to 20%, because the Egyptian authorities are reluctant to alarm the Muslim majority with the true figure. There was and is the Syrian Church, with centres throughout the Near East and in modern Iraq, although rather fewer in that desperate country since the Anglo-American invasion of 2003 and the lack of any sane plan to win the peace. Christians are much less tolerated there than under Saddam Hussein, whose Ba'athist party had secularized that country, and most Christians have quit their homeland. As we shall see, the Western Roman Empire fell in the 5th century. By the middle of the 7th century, the greatest threat to Christendom, Greek and Roman, came from Islam. Muslim armies careered out of Arabia, and the Byzantine emperors lost Palestine, Syria, and North Africa, including their most valuable province of Egypt, where most of the empire's grain originated. Muslims made some early progress into Anatolia, Turkey today, the Byzantine heartland. Constantinople, as a great imperial city, never fully recovered. Muslims from North Africa detached most of Iberia from Christianity in the 7th and 8th centuries, and might have overthrown Christianity in the West altogether, had their invasion of modern France not been stopped at Poitiers in 732 by the Christian leader Charles Martel. What if the battle had gone the other way? Is it possible that Western Europe would have converted to Islam as other peoples conquered by Islam converted. Imagine the consequences if the 16th century Portuguese and Spanish conquistadores of Central and South America had been Muslims. What if North America had been conquered by Muslim British? Of course, Columbus's voyage in 1492 across the Atlantic made the American continent safe for Christianity. Even so, Iberia was lost to Christianity for 800 years until the fall of the Muslim Sultanate of Granada, also in 1492, to the Catholic monarchs Ferdinand and Isabella. Between 800 and 1050, part of Italy itself were regularly under Muslim rule or threat of invasion from Muslim Sicily, until that island was conquered and made secure for Roman Catholicism in the 11th century by the Normans. The Normans, I can almost hear you asking. Well, the Normans did not just conquer England. We might say now that they were on a roll, one branch going south to the Mediterranean to Sicily, the other across the English Channel to Hastings, both branches becoming kings. Don't be surprised if, as I tell this story, the world up to 1500 years ago seems very like the world today. Names, places, language, expectation, and means of acquiring and exercising power may be somewhat different, but in the way human beings behave, nothing fundamentally has changed at all. To purloin the 17th century philosopher Thomas Hobbes's observation that life for most people in his century was nasty, brutish, and short, it was hardly less so in this period, traditionally and not always accurately called the Dark Ages. It is today still nasty, brutish, and short over great tracts of the earth, and even in areas of our own advanced Western civilization. If our ancestors had any advantages over us, they were certainly not material, the yardstick by which we measure benefit in the 21st century. What our ancestors did have, and we no longer have, whatever we may think of it, was cohesion in religious belief. Only 100 years ago, the French social scientist and atheist Emile Durkeim believed that society needed religion. Our ancestors believed, and it filled them with the wonder and hope of salvation, where everyone would be equal. How else could they have coped with what we shall be hearing in this documentary? If death was the only goal of life, then faith was the key to everything. Religion gave purpose and meaning to all. It still does to many people. It defined right and wrong. It was through religion that people expressed all important matters in this formerly Roman world, which two great faiths had to share from the 7th century. We shall be coming back to these matters before we are done, but in the next episode we shall outline the Anglo-Saxon background. And if anyone is thinking of sending an email to ask why we have not yet mentioned Picts, Welsh, Irish, Jutes, Franks, Frisians, peace, we shall get to them.
We shall be coming back to these matters before we are done, but in the next episode we shall outline the Anglo-Saxon background. And if anyone is thinking of sending an email to ask why we have not yet mentioned Picts, Welsh, Irish, Jutes, Franks, Frisians, peace, we shall get to them.